What if I told you that your future is already being built? And the frightening part is, you may not be the one building it. Right now, you are driving the most powerful machine you will ever own, your mind. That can build your future, solve problems, create opportunity, and completely change your direction. But years ago, you may have quietly taken your hands off the wheel. Since then, worry, comparison, fear, distraction, and other people's opinions may have had their hands on the controls. And when the wrong thoughts control that machine, the result is predictable. Your confidence weakens, your goals remain distant, and another year passes, looking almost exactly like the last. Here is the hard truth. Most people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because they never take back the wheel. A drifting mind creates a drifting life. But for the next 30 days, you can interrupt that drift. 1. Choose a single target for your mind. 2. Replace every fearful thought the moment it appears. 3. Back your thinking with visible daily action. That is the whole test. 1 goal, 1 card. 1 rule for fear. 1 meaningful action every day. It sounds almost too simple to change a life, and that is exactly why most people ignore it. And why most people never discover what happens when they actually complete it. Let me show you why these 3 disciplines work, how they change the way your mind responds to fear, and what happened to one man who almost quit before day 1 had even begun. Because 30 days from now, your circumstances may not be completely different, but you may be. The man who almost didn't start. Picture a man named Daniel. 41 years old, decent job, decent house, nothing wrong with his life on paper, and nothing right with it either. Every morning he wakes up, and the first thought in his head is the same one: I'm behind. Behind on money, behind on health, behind compared to the guy he went to college with, who now runs 3 companies. Daniel has heard about goal setting 100 times. He's read the books. He's watched the videos. He nods along and does nothing, because nodding along is free and changing is not. His wife handles the grocery budget, and one week Daniel notices something small that bothers him more than it should. She's standing in the aisle comparing 2 brands of coffee, doing the same quiet math she does every week, putting the cheaper one back in her hand instead of the one she actually likes. Nobody complains. Nobody says anything is wrong. But something about watching her do that arithmetic, week after week, over a difference that barely matters, sits in Daniel's chest like a stone he can't put down. One Tuesday night, lying awake doing his own math on bills in his head, he finally says it out loud in the dark. I've had it. Not dramatic. Not a lightning bolt. Just quiet, flat exhaustion with his own excuses. That's the moment the test becomes real for him, not because something magical happened, but because he finally got specific. Instead of I want a better life, he wrote 1 sentence on an index card. Save $5,000 by building a side skill I can sell. 1 goal, not 10, not a feeling. A target he could picture finishing. He put that card in his wallet. He looked at it when he woke up, and he looked at it before he turned off the lamp at night. He didn't tell his co-workers. He didn't post about it. He just looked at the card morning and night, the way you'd check a compass without announcing it to the room. Nothing happened on day 1. Nothing happened on day 4. Day 4, if anything, felt worse. The same tired thoughts showed up right on schedule, like they hadn't gotten the memo that something had changed. But by day 11, something shifted. Not in his bank account, but in the half-second gap between a bad thought arriving and Daniel deciding what to do with it. Why the replacement rule works. Here's what Daniel discovered, and what the 30-day test is built on. The mind doesn't argue with what you plant in it. It simply grows it. Earl Nightingale put it simply. We become what we think about. Whatever runs on repeat in your head becomes the instruction set for your attention, your emotions, and eventually your actions. So the test isn't about pretending negative thoughts won't show up. They will. Fear will show up. Doubt will show up. The old familiar thought, I can't do this, it's too late, everyone else is ahead, will knock on the door almost every single day, sometimes several times before lunch. The rule is not to fight it. The rule is to replace it immediately with the picture of your goal. When Daniel thought I'm behind, he trained himself to answer with the picture on his card, not by yelling at the fear, not by denying it existed, just by redirecting attention, the same way you gently steer a car back into its lane, instead of wrestling the wheel or slamming the brakes. This sounds almost too simple to matter, and that's exactly why most people skip past it. They want a more complicated answer, because a complicated answer feels like it deserves the size of the problem. But the mind doesn't reward complexity. It rewards repetition. Do this enough times, and something happens that feels almost unfair. The mind starts reaching for the goal on its own, the way a habit runs without being told to, the way you don't have to remind yourself to check for cars before crossing a street you've crossed 1,000 times. Daniel noticed the shift first in small moments. Standing in line at the pharmacy, the old thought about his college friend's 3 companies would surface, and instead of spiraling into 20 minutes of comparison, his mind would flick, almost on its own, to the $5,000 number on his card. It didn't feel like willpower. It felt more like a reflex he'd built without quite noticing the building. The soil doesn't argue. There's an old principle that explains why this works. As you sow, so shall you reap. Your mind behaves like fertile soil. It doesn't judge the seed. It doesn't decide whether worry is a good seed or a bad one. It just grows whatever gets planted, and it grows it faithfully, without opinion, without exception. That's why so many people stay stuck. They complain about the harvest, while sowing the exact same seeds every morning. They want confidence but rehearse doubt. They want progress but feed distraction. They want a new year but repeat the same internal script from the last one, word for word, thought for thought. The 30-day test interrupts that pattern by forcing one uncomfortable daily question. What am I planting today? Daniel started noticing his own soil. Every time he scrolled past someone else's success and felt that familiar sting of comparison, he caught it. Sometimes late, sometimes only after an hour of stewing, and pulled his attention back to the card in his wallet. Slowly, the sting got shorter. Not gone. Shorter. The seeds he'd been planting for years without noticing didn't disappear overnight. But for the first time, he was choosing which ones got water and which ones got left to die in the sun. This is the part people underestimate. They expect the harvest before the roots have even formed. Roots take time you can't see. A thought repeated on day 3 doesn't look any different from a thought repeated on day 20, right up until it suddenly does. There's no visible marker for the moment a new mental habit takes over from an old one. It just quietly happens somewhere around the 2nd or 3rd week. And you usually only notice it in hindsight. The way you notice a callus has formed only after you touch something rough and feel nothing. It's worth adding that the test doesn't ask you to stop thinking entirely, only to stop thinking passively. Spend a few minutes each day asking sharper questions of yourself. What is the most important task connected to my goal today? What weakness needs correcting before it costs me more time later? What am I overlooking in the work I already have in front of me? The average person waits for an answer to show up on its own. The directed person goes looking for one on purpose, the way you'd search a room for something you know is in there somewhere. Attitude is the multiplier. There's a reason this test asks for more than thought control. Attitude is the magic word. Attitude is the atmosphere you carry into every task, every conversation, every setback. You can have the right goal and still sabotage it with the wrong posture toward your own effort. For the 30 days, the shift is small but constant. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what do I do now? Instead of, there's no opportunity, ask, how do I get more prepared? Instead of, this is too hard, ask, what skill do I need to build? These aren't affirmations. They're redirections. They move you from reacting to deciding, from passenger to driver. And the difference between an affirmation and a redirection matters more than it sounds. An affirmation says something is already true when it isn't yet. A redirection asks a better question and lets the answer do the work. Daniel didn't become a different person overnight. He became someone who, when his boss dumped extra work on him with no thanks, asked, what does this teach me? Instead of stewing in resentment for the rest of the day. It didn't fix the unfairness of the situation. It just meant the unfairness stopped eating hours it had no right to. Thought without action is just daydreaming. Here's where most self-help advice quietly fails people. It stops at thinking. The 30-day test doesn't. A goal card in your wallet is not a finish line. It's a command to work with sharper direction. During these 30 days, the instruction is simple. Give more than is required. Improve what you touch. Study harder than you have to. If the goal is financial, Remember that money follows value. Rewards follow service. If the goal is personal growth, confidence follows action, not the other way around. If the goal is career advancement, opportunity follows preparation, not complaining about the lack of it. Daniel didn't wait for permission to build his skill. He spent 30 minutes most nights, not every night, most nights, learning the one thing his side project needed. Some nights it was 10 minutes, because that's all he had left after a long day and a tired brain. It still counted. 1 page read, 1 skill practiced, 1 improvement made. Small actions aren't small when they're repeated in the direction of something specific. The same way a single brick isn't a wall until you've stopped counting how many you've stacked. What happens when you fail? Halfway through, be honest with yourself about this part. You will probably break the test at some point. Day 9 might collapse into a night of doom scrolling and self-pity. Day 17 might vanish into old habits because life got loud and the card stayed in the wallet, forgotten. That's not the end of the test. That's the test. Persistence is simply another word for faith. Persistence isn't loud. It isn't a burst of motivation or a dramatic recommitment ceremony. It's quiet continuation, reading the card again tomorrow morning even though you skipped it yesterday. Doing the work again, replacing the fear again, choosing the goal again without drama, without punishing yourself for the gap. Daniel broke his own streak twice in 30 days. Once, an ugly week at work left him too drained to look at the card for 4 straight days. The second time he simply forgot. No crisis, no excuse, just forgetfulness. Both times he started the count again the next morning, instead of declaring the whole thing pointless. He didn't rewrite the goal. He didn't decide he needed a better plan before continuing. He just picked the card back up. That decision, to begin again without ceremony, mattered more than any single day he got right. A person doesn't build mental strength by never encountering resistance. He builds it by returning to the discipline after the resistance wins around. 30 days are passing. Either way, here's the part almost nobody says out loud. The next 30 days are going to happen to you regardless. They'll pass if you drift. They'll pass if you scroll. They'll pass if you complain that nothing ever changes and do exactly what you did last month to prove it. Time doesn't wait for you to be ready, and it doesn't pause while you decide whether you feel like starting, but they can also pass while you build something, while you train your attention instead of surrendering it by default, while you plant one deliberate seed instead of the same tired one from last year and the year before that. Daniel's 30 days didn't end with him quitting his job or becoming unrecognizable. He hadn't hit $5,000 by day 30. He was closer to 600. But something else had changed that the number didn't capture. He'd gone 30 days without letting a single bad morning define the whole day. He'd caught himself, redirected himself, and kept moving over and over, until catching himself stopped feeling like an effort and started feeling like who he was. So go back to the machine. You wouldn't leave a powerful engine running without your hands on the controls, drifting toward whatever ditch happens to be nearest. Yet that's what an undirected mind does every single day it's left on autopilot, and most people leave it on autopilot for years without ever noticing the drift, because drift is quiet and slow and doesn't announce itself the way a crash does. Put your hands back on the wheel. Choose one goal, not 10, one. Write it on a card. Look at it morning and night. The moment fear shows up, replace it with that picture instead of arguing with the fear or trying to outshout it. Give more than is asked of you. Watch your attitude the way you'd watch your speed on a sharp curve. And when you fail partway through, because you probably will, because almost everyone does, begin again without making it a verdict on who you are. Ask yourself the same 4 questions Daniel eventually had to answer. Why try at all when it would be easier to keep drifting? Why not when the alternative is more of the same year on repeat, dressed up in a new calendar? Why not you specifically, when other people with far less going for them have done exactly this and come out the other side different? And why not now, tonight, instead of some cleaner, more convenient Monday that never actually arrives because it never does? The future isn't waiting for permission. It's waiting for direction. 30 days. One goal. Hands on the wheel. Start tonight.